Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Remember to subscribe to the show. Follow us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Aston Villa have agreed a deal to sign Everton midfielder Amadou Onana. The fee for the 22-year-old Belgian international is around £50 million, according to the Athletic's David Ornstein. To find out more about Anana, I'm joined by Matt Jones from the Blue Room podcast and Liverpool Echo newspaper. Matt, nice to speak to you again. Slightly different to the last deal we talked about, Lewis Dobbin, Timmy Robenham. It's a bit bigger this one. How do you feel about the move yourself?
Yeah, thanks for asking me on, as ever, mate. Yeah, maybe you can learn us Jaden Philogene as well, and we can sort of have another chat because I think a lot of Evertonians were disappointed we didn't get that one over the line. But yeah, it's I think it I think this is a rare transfer where everybody feels quite good about it. I imagine Villa fans are very excited to get him over the line. I imagine Anana is very excited at the prospect of getting him to play Champions League football next season. He's somebody spoken quite openly and candidly about certainly when he's been away on international duty with Belgium. And I think from Everton's perspective and Everton's supporters' perspective, it always felt like this summer the one big player was going to have to move on for us to be able to strengthen the squad, for us to be able to get over the PSR threshold and of the big plays we've got in terms of Jarrett Brantwaite, in terms of Anana, and in terms of maybe Calvert-Lewin and Pickford. I think you could have asked any Evertonian which one of those four you'd maybe want to leave. It would probably be Anana, and that's not to say that Anana's not a good player and has not got a high ceiling, but it's just felt as though, as much as Sean Dyche has sort of got his feet more and more under the table at Everton, Anana has kind of been phased out more and more as well. And it's just felt like he's not a good fit for the way in which Dyche wants to play. So if you look at some of Everton's best performances towards the end of last season, he left on the bench a lot. So yeah, it just feels like one which makes sense for everybody. Everton get a good fee and a good profit on a player he spent 30 million on 2 years ago. The player gets what he wants, and Villa get a player who's talented, who's got so many great characteristics, but has still got a lot of learning to do as well, and got a very very high ceiling.
Yeah, I will mention that about him coming out of the team. But what do you think what do you think Anana's strongest attributes are?
Um, he's an immense tackler. Like his slide tackling is absolutely phenomenal, and there are times where you sit in the ground and you can sort of see him winding up to go in for to try and win the ball, and you sort of cringe and you have that little internal moment in your head where you say out loud, "Don't dive in there," and he does, and he 9 times out of 10 he wins the ball and wins the ball very cleanly, and he comes away with it. His physique is amazing, and the way in which he times tackles and the sort of the way in which he can manipulate those long legs to win the ball back is fantastic. And that has been the thing that's definitely struck me the most about him. Obviously, standing at 6'5" as well, he is a presence in midfield. Albeit he's not great in the air, which is a weird thing to say about someone who's 6'5". He's got a bit of a 50p head, as we say, around here when it comes to actually heading the ball. Um, but I think he's gifted in possession as well. He's certainly someone who you wouldn't say hides when getting the ball. He likes to drop deep and try and take it off the centre backs. I think he welcomes the pressure from opposition midfielders trying to he can use his body to manipulate and get past them and get the play going. So he's got a lot. He's got a lot of really good attributes. Good on the ball, good tackler, good defensive awareness. But his issue, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later on, is his issue is putting it together on a consistent basis. And I think if he can do that, then they're going to get a serious midfielder because the attributes are there absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Aston Villa themselves. I mean, we definitely need a sort of a presence within midfield to be somewhat physically commanding. Somebody who's taller, somebody who would set pieces might actually win more headers. Because at present, Aston Villa's biggest weakness, I think, is that there are some games where we go from looking composed and in control to looking a bit too casual. We get a bit overwhelmed physically when teams come right back at us. Hence, we've been 2-0 up in some games and teams have come back to draw 2-2 or 3-2 a couple of times. So to have someone like an Arnold like that seems to make a lot of sense in my head. But where do you think he might actually be at his weakest as well, though?
I think it's about concentration for Anana, and I think at times, and this isn't to say he's not a good character or not a team player. It's felt like at Everton he's very concentrated on how he looks or how he does things. And the example a lot of Evertonians will go back to is that we had a penalty shootout against Fulham in the League Cup back in December, and we were on a great run. It was after the points deduction. We'd been beat by Manchester United, but then we went on a 4-game winning run in the Premier League and didn't concede a goal. We played Fulham in the Carabao Cup quarter final. We scored a late goal to take it to penalties, and Anana had a penalty to win the shootout for us. And I vividly remember being stood in the ground and saying, as he was running up to take the penalty kick, "Don't do anything daft to you." And he did something daft. He walked up, tried to do a bit of an Ivan Toney, went to roll it in one of the corners, and the keeper just read it, and it looked horrendous. And I think that was kind of a point where a lot of Evertonians kind of had enough of him by then, because it was sort of like he wanted to be the flashy player who won the game in the most Instagram viral worthy moments possible. And I think that's an aspect of his character which has come across at times. He is quite flashy. There's somebody in our podcast who's put it brilliantly about Anana down the years, is that he wants to do the best looking thing rather than the best thing. That's kind of how he plays his football. He plays a little bit like the girl who we really fancy. He's just sat in the stands watching him, trying to make an impression. And that's something that you'd expect from a young player, I suppose, who has clearly got a lot of belief in himself and clearly got a lot of ability. But I think that's not necessarily something that's suited to a team like Everton, who are in a relegation battle and are scrapping and fighting for their lives. And certainly not suited to someone like Sean Dyche, who, as I'm sure all your listeners and viewers will know, is very much a back to basics kind of football manager. So it's just kind of felt like it's not been a great fit. For no one's real fault, it really. Since about December, it's felt as though everybody would be kind of happy to go their separate ways come the end of the season. And it just feels like one of those, like I said before, it feels like it just makes sense for everybody. But I think in terms of going, sorry, rambled on a little bit there, just reliving past trauma of that penalty and not getting through that game has set me off a little bit. But in terms of his weaknesses, I think concentration absolutely up there. Simplifying his game, I think he can certainly do. And just, I think maybe trying to find a set position as well. I look at Villa's side and I think of Kamara, and I imagine he'll be the one who'll partner him when he gets fit again. And he feels like that sort of defensive anchor. I might be totally wrong here, but he sort of feels like that defensive anchor in midfield, and maybe that can free Anana up a little bit to be the player who carries the ball forward and impacts the game a little bit more in the final third. And I think nailing down that position, whether he's a 6, whether he's an 8 as well, is something he's not really yet to do.
Yeah, I mean, Dyche really wasn't playing him towards the end of the season, and you've sort of alluded to it there. I guess it probably seems a little bit like he sounds to me like, when I think of a Sean Dyche player, he doesn't sound like one I would probably describe off the top of my head. I mean, why do you think he primarily took him out of the team towards the end of the season?
I just think that the players we had available were a better fit. Idrissa Gana Gueye, obviously another former Villa player, was just stepped up so much towards the back end of last season and was playing out of his skin and looked like the player who went to Paris Saint-Germain and played really well in the Champions League. He's scoring goals, breaking up play, carrying the ball forward. You think of Everton's great run towards the end of last season where he beat so many teams at home. It was Idrissa Gueye who was central to that. And you sort of feel as though, as much as they're obviously so different in stature, that they kind of fulfill quite a similar role in the team where they want to sit at the base of the midfield, they occupy similar areas of the pitch. So I think he went to Garner, Gueye, and then James Garner. It's been very confusing for Everton. There's no reason why I'm quite happy he's going as well, because you've got Garner, Anana, and Garner again. So it takes one of them out when you're trying to analyse all this sort of stuff. But I think he just felt they were maybe too similar. I wanted to do too similar a job, and then he obviously went. I think he really likes James Garner as well for his work rate and set pieces. Can play in a few different positions. So he just kind of settled on that, and it wasn't necessarily that you looked at Anana and thought, this lad's playing terrible. Like I said, it just felt like he wasn't really a good fit. He was somebody who was always dropping deep to try and get the ball, whereas it always felt like Everton wanted to, well, certainly Dyche wanted us to play a bit quicker forward, not play through midfield as much, get it up to Calvert-Lewin and out wide and try and get crosses into the box. And when you've got a player who wants to be that person who everything goes through at the base of the midfield, then that position kind of doesn't exist in a Sean Dyche side. So it just kind of felt like longer and longer as the season went on that the fit wasn't right. And from Anana's point of view, it's going to be interesting because obviously Villa, I've watched it a few times at Goodison Park under Emery. It seems as though come what may, if it's 11 on 11 pressing the ball, you will play out from the back. And I think Anana will love that, and he'll love that challenge, trying to get the ball in those tight spaces and trying to manipulate it, hold players off and pop it out into wide positions. I'm going to be really interested. I think he will fancy himself to do that, and it will suit him ideally. What I'm interested to see is whether he can actually do that, whether he's got the technical ability and the awareness and the bravery in those big occasions, under a lot more pressure, perhaps than maybe he would be at Everton, to be able to do that role, because it's tricky, isn't it? It's a different type of bravery to take the ball in those areas, and as much as he showed for it a lot at Everton, he didn't really get it all that often because of the way he played.
Yeah, that's really fascinating description. At Aston Villa, having that defensive midfielder who can come deep and grab the ball and turn and play very deliberately and through the midfield and change the play. That's a very Emery style. So I could, it sort of leads me on to my next question, really. You know, would he basically suit being in a team that's a little bit more a possession-based side than, say, what Everton are currently playing under Sean Dyche? And that kind of answers it, I guess. He'll be fascinating to see. But
Yeah,
something else about him as well is that his defensive stats are very strong. One of the top tackling midfielders going, really. But sort of going forward, his progressive stats aren't fantastic. Do you think there's a lot of room for improvement there? Do you think he has the potential to do it? And could he not just be a defensive midfielder, but also perhaps a more progressive midfielder who pushes from goes box to box, or maybe actually plays further ahead from a CDM?
yeah. I think you get glimpses of that from him. I think when he first came to Everton, there was a lot of comparisons between him and Fellaini, because he was just this very gangly, very tall Belgian midfielder that obviously we'd had. And I think to begin with, Lampard didn't quite know where to play him, so he played a bit pushed higher up quite a lot. And there was the odd little moments where he showcased those sort of attacking qualities, but not really. And I think those comparisons between him and Fellaini quickly faded away when we realised how different they were. There have been moments where he sort of gets hold of the ball and will just go forward from midfield and drive. And he's obviously got such a long, elegant gait in his running style that he can eat up the ground really quickly and change defence into attack very fast. But I'm struggling to think of any of those moments where there's been a killer pass at the end of it, or where there's been a shot that's gone in at the end of it, or anything like that. And I think off the top of my head, and I can't remember all his goals for Everton, but he must have only scored 2 or 3, I imagine, in his time at Everton. But I think one was a header, a couple have been sort of bundled in on the line. So he's not really got that striking ability from distance. He's not really going to be someone who curls one in from the edge of the box, from like a cut back, I don't think. And like I said earlier, for someone who gets up so well and has got a great spring, he doesn't seem to time his headers all that well. It feels like he gets up there a lot, but then often the ball skews over the bar, or goes straight down. So I think there are areas he can improve in that, but I don't think you're going to see someone necessarily who's going to chip in with being 5 and 10 goals a season. He feels to me like, I imagine Emery would have looked at him and thought, this is a lad who wants to get on the ball and in deep areas that we can play through. So perhaps in a better side, better attacking players around, we might see a little bit more from him from an attacking point of view. But those moments have been eye-catching when he's done them for Everton, but I'd say quite rare as well.
Okay. And an interesting one for me as well is, I'm wondering if Aston Villa might shift to a back three next season from a four, and on occasion maybe even consider playing Anana as one of the back three or in defence. Has he ever played in defence for Everton?
No, he's not. I think that he was billed. I think when we signed him from Lille, there was a few occasions where they said he had played in defence, but it's been, like I said, there's been varying degrees of, he played as an attacking midfielder for a bit, but he's mainly just been that central midfielder, that number 6 for us.
Okay, and sort of finally, then I guess the fee, 50 million. It's quite a bit of money that Monchi and Unai Emery have found down the back of the sofa. Do you think he's worth that? Do you think he has the potential to be a player that could be have an even higher ceiling than that?
Yeah, I think he can. But I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it just feels like a good deal for everyone, in the sense that I think a lot of our supporters feel like we should have got more from him, but I think that's entirely based on what he could be as opposed to what he is at the moment. And I think from Everton's point of view as well, I think we need to be realistic about the situation we're in terms of, everybody knows that Anana wants to leave. Everybody knows that he's probably our third choice central midfielder at the moment with the way we play. Everybody knows our financial situation, and people know that I think the priority for Everton this summer is to keep Jarrett Brown's weight as much as possible. So, that factors in as well. So I don't think Everton are in the best
Fantastic. That was really, really informative. And thank you so much for letting us know about all that, Matt. Also, I sincerely hope this allows Everton to keep Brandthwaite, because he's a fantastic player. And it's also quite funny seeing how annoyed Man United fans seem to be about that. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, Matt, where can we find you and your work online?
Yeah, so I'm an editor at the Liverpool Echo Sports Desk. I'm obviously doing loads of stuff around pre-season at the moment. So do check that out if you're interested in Everton's build-up. And I host the Blue Room podcast as well, which is a bit more of a raw, less professional view on it, you could say, than the stuff the lads do for the Echo. So both of those as well.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Matt.
Cheers, mate.